Anyway, well, I'm so glad to have you on. It's a small group, but I would love to. So I have some slides, but we don't need to, I don't know, they're slides. So the whole concept of this, so I've been talking about, we ran a session about onboarding. I have another one planned, I think in September, where we'll talk about onboarding and adoption a little bit. But one of the things that came up in the last session was, so I currently work at a company called Kong. We are in the API management space. Oh yeah, you can see my background. This is my Zoom background from my work. We work in the API management space, and our core product is an API management platform. It falls typically within IT in terms of our buyers. So often our C-level sponsors are CTOs, sometimes CIOs. And it's an extremely technical product. It started actually as in the dev tools world, an API gateway, an open source product. So we're very much working in that world. And one of the things that came up when we were talking about onboarding in the last session earlier this month was, okay, it's all well and good to talk about onboarding and you can build out beautiful email sequences and in-app onboarding when you've got a fairly straightforward product. Maybe your company sells one product. Maybe that product is just a SaaS with a lovely UX experience and like getting people started, a couple integrations, getting people up and running is simple. I've got plenty of tips for that. A cloud guru was that way. My previous companies have been that way. Onboarding was not that hard. I got to Kong about 2.5 years ago, over 2.5 years ago now, although it's startup life, so it feels like 1,000. I think that's just how it always goes. And that is not the case. So just to give y'all, okay, I will share slides, but not for forever. Just to give a sense of like what I'm talking about. So on the left here, this is our product section on our public facing website. And it has been through a number of redesigns, but this is like the best design that it can be. So to give you a sense of our product landscape, no, we're not Microsoft, we're not Workday, right? We don't have as many products as that. But for a startup and for a one-person customer marketing and advocacy function, this is a lot, right? Some of these tie together. We have customers that buy multiple products, right? So if we've got these customer segments, one, the product itself, our onboarding often takes 6, 9, 12 months just for teams to working with our teams to build out the infrastructure, to manage all of their APIs, get everything consolidated in one place. And that gets complicated by the fact that we have customers who will they'll buy one product and then they'll buy another one and they have to migrate from one to the other. Then they'll buy another product, then another one. And all of a sudden the onboarding landscape has just exploded. On the right here, this is just a little screenshot of our post-sales customer engagement map, our customer engagement plan post-sales. Every single one of these little boxes, can y'all still see my screen? It's all good? Okay, cool. Each one of these little boxes is most of them are actually 4 steps at least within each one. So, we're a fairly small group. So like if you want to share a little bit about, your product's landscape, or feel free to throw in the chat or just put up your hand, like if this looks familiar, if you're also dealing with a situation where you've got complex products, long onboarding periods, multiple products in your product suite, if this is something that you deal with too.
One of our big issues is that a lot of our products are on-prem.
Yep, we have that too. This one, Kong Gateway Enterprise, that's an on-prem product. We have a SaaS version of it, but on-prem. Yep, onboarding into an on-prem environment it's so
really
hard.
challenging. Yeah, because we can't measure what they're doing in there. We really can't measure usage. The amount of visibility I have is like, have they activated their license? And beyond that, and also have they logged into customer portal? Yep. But beyond that, we don't have a lot of visibility. We have rather small SaaS footprint. So I would say like 80 to 90% of our customers really fit into that on-prem situation. We also have, I would say, about 7 distinct product lines.
Yeah. Yeah. All of those things make it extremely complicated. We have some level of like telemetry, like phone home logs that our on-prem product can send back. But the challenge there is customers can turn it off, and sometimes they do. So often we don't know if they're having problems until they raise a support ticket. Like we might not know. So yeah, I'm glad we can all sympathize. So this is the landscape we're dealing with, right? Every piece of it just becomes more and more difficult. So all right, what do? I am not going to at all say that I am like the expert and we have it figured out and everything is so great. That would just be incorrect. And I'm not, right? We're all figuring it out as we go to some extent, right? Always iterating, always trying to improve. But when I was thinking about this and like sort of where we are in our journey to have awesome onboarding, these are some of the questions that I kept going back to, right? Who owns customer onboarding? It certainly is not just customer marketing. I guess maybe at other organizations, it could just be customer marketing, but that I highly doubt that, right? Especially if you're selling enterprise products, you probably have a fairly significant customer success team. You may also have account managers. Sales is to some extent, depending on what size contracts you are selling and what your kind of sales engagement model looks like. Sales might still be involved, even if they're not in the day-to-day of the technical part, they might still be involved. You may have professional services. We have a very, very robust professional services team with all sorts of field engineers, technical account managers, right? Depending on the customer level. We have customer support, we have customer education, we have product, right? We have many, many, many stakeholders. So when it comes to the question of like who owns customer onboarding, it's not that simple. There's a lot of people and they're all probably going to have strong opinions about what it should look like. The other thing that I think about is how do we differentiate between customer segments? And in the first session that I ran on the topic of onboarding, we talked about data. Customer data is something that I think most organizations really struggle with. But when you're looking at a complicated or a complex product and or product landscape, making sure that you have the best data that you can have in the scenario is important, because it is impossible to do any sort of scale if you don't have some sort of way to identify, okay, this is a tier 1 customer. Their onboarding should look like this. If they purchase product A, product B, product C combination, their onboarding should then look like this, right? Versus this is a totally different type of customer. This is a tier 4 customer, whatever, nomenclature you use. A tier 4 customer, their onboarding should look like this. Being able to differentiate that is the only way to add any sort of scalability. The third thing I think about is, what are our success metrics? What does success mean, right? Onboarding is so crucial. Successful onboarding, we know, is highly correlated with renewal rates, with expansion, but what are those success metrics? And they're going to look so different for every customer, right? I mean, for every customer and every organization, typically, you want to think about various milestones. Are they in production? Are they actually using the product? How connected is your product to their business critical operations? That's something we really think about. Because if you're not intertwined there, you become a very, very easy budget line to cut out when the renewal comes around. So I think there's success metrics both in sort of the micro and the macro. The macro, of course, being what I just mentioned about how tied in are you with their business critical operations. The micro just being, how do we know that a customer has moved from stage 1 in onboarding to stage 2? How do we track those milestones? What are those milestones? Do we all agree that those are the milestones? And then 4, what channels do we have available to use? This is the sort of like marketing piece, but I think it becomes really important to this landscape, especially given number 1, you're going to have a lot of different people interfacing with your customers. So, from our perspective as marketers, what channels are we using? If you do have a SaaS product, can you do in-product communication? Are you pretty restricted to just emails? What does your webinar program look like? Do you have office hours? What are your documentation? If you are in the sort of like, you've got a very technical product, how's your documentation, and how do you share about your documentation, right? All of these different ways to get in front of people. These are the sorts of things that we think about. Customer portal, actually, you mentioned that. It's weird as a marketer to think of a customer portal as a channel, but it kind of is. Often that is a place where customers go for resources. So if we're following the mindset of be where your customers are when they need you, I think really doing an audit of all of the channels you have available to you. Community, I didn't even mention that, but if you have a community, right, I think that's a big part too. So, all right, sorry, I know we're covering a lot, but like this is, it's complicated, it's complex. All right, so again, I am deeply not like, I would never posit myself as the expert on all of this. We're in the weeds just as much as probably all of y'all are. But these are some of the things that we do to make complicated onboarding easier. And I will caveat that some of these are things that we are actively doing. Some of these are things that are in place. And then some of these are for my organization and for me, sort of wish list items. I hope y'all are in the same place. If somebody has this all figured out and is like, yeah, we nail this, please DM me. Like, I want to know how you do it. We are always a work in progress over here. All right, so this is something that we are working on I don't even know what version it is, a V probably 10 of at this point, is getting organized internally. My company, so Kong is an extremely global company. We've got customers in 100-something countries. We've got teams spread out all over the globe. And historically, our org chart has kind of reflected that. And consequently, our onboarding has reflected that too. So right now, we are in the midst of pulling everything together to create a new version of a customer journey map and a customer engagement process. This is a really big lift because, again, there's a lot of stakeholders here. But we are all working together: marketing, customer success, professional services, support, education, sales, product, et cetera, everyone, to make sure that we are all on the same page and are agreed upon this engagement process. So the thought is, once we build out a global gold standard and we've got the assets to support it, then we will have a more unified approach, as opposed to, I think in a lot of companies, what it looks like, especially when your product is complex, it's a little bit ad hoc. Every customer is treated a little differently, which they need to be to some extent, but you can't scale that way. The other piece is the messaging. I think we as marketers think a lot about messaging. And this is something that I am continuing to beat the drum about with our other teams. Some of this is bigger questions like, what are the steps to get onboarded? Do we all agree that this is the first thing you need to do, and then this is the second? And then once you've got that established, all right, great, but like, how do we talk about that? And one of the things that I think customer marketers are so good at, and one of our superpowers that I hope organizations recognize, in my experience, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, is we're very good at outside in thinking. I think it's really easy for teams that are often working internally to get really caught up in, okay, well, this is how we talk about this. And sometimes don't stop to say, okay, that's how we talk about this. How do our customers talk about this? How would somebody who's never encountered this product before, how would they talk about it? I know that sounds extremely basic, but I think this is something that I've run into at every company I've worked at. So I'm hoping it's not just unique to me, but really getting very, very clear internally on what you are talking about. Like, what are the steps, and then how do we talk about it? And then the third, this is, I think, one of the keys. How do you make sure you understand, or making sure that you work to understand how all of these different processes and work streams will work in parallel? We know that CS is going to be engaging with customers. We know professional services is going to be engaging with customers. Customer support will have their own engagement. We'll have our own customer education. We might have community, right? Marketing is going to be sending out emails and communication as well. How do these work in parallel? What should come first? What should come second? How much control do we have over that? Just getting a very clear sense across all of the teams that are involved in onboarding on, one, that these are all going to happen at the same time, and two, making sure that they fit in nicely together, like puzzle pieces. This is something that I think also can be challenging, because often I find that the teams who work one-to-one with customers can be a little reluctant, or sometimes a little unwilling to have other people also engaging with their customers. And that can be very different across different organizations and even within organizations. But I think if you can lay out, hey, this is what our work stream is going to look like. These are the types of communications. This is what we're sending. This is where we're sending it. This is when we're sending it. That helps everyone get on the same page about, all right, we are all going to be talking to these same customers. That's just a fact. Let's make sure that we agree and are agreed upon, like, what we are all sending. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head, but I want to, okay, cool. Anybody really, really good at this who wants to brag? Anyone feel like their team internally is extremely well organized and just like well-oiled machine? Nope. All right, well, good. I'm glad it's not just me. Or one of y'all wants to brag and you're too embarrassed to brag. That's fine too. All right. This is where we come in. Scale. This is the role of marketing. Whenever I have to present internally about marketing, especially to CX, this is the real piece that I harp on. Probably not unfamiliar to y'all. Okay, so, oh, I forgot a parentheses. Dang it. All right, well, there's an end parentheses there. How can we automate this? If you, like most companies, are looking to grow and scale, you cannot do that through every individual CSM being responsible for all communications to all of their customers, especially if you're a company that works kind of across different sales bands or sales segments. Maybe you have a digital segment or a commercial segment, mid-market, enterprise, strategic, whatever you call them. You cannot do this through one-to-one communication, or you can, but it will be extremely expensive and probably a bad customer experience. So this is where we look to automate. Full disclosure, this is where in my company right now, we are kind of here in terms of revamping a lot of our onboarding. So we've got some basic onboarding in place, but we've got some new engagement processes, some new tiers that our head of our chief customer officer and our chief revenue officer are aligning on, which means we have to go back and redo a bunch of things to align with all of that. So this is what I'm looking at right now. Okay, how are we scaling this? And of course, with this, tiers, segmentation, absolutely your friend. And I think about tiers and segmentation in a couple of different ways. One being like whatever internally you're using in terms of sales tiers or CS tiers. They might have different, whether it's employee caps, whether it's ACC or ACV or ARR caps. Maybe they've got, maybe customers over a certain value are in one tier. That's how we do it, but different companies do it in different ways. So there's that amount of tiering. Then there's also the segmentation around personas, or not personas so much as like product user segments. So you might have your executive buyers. All right, they should be getting different communication than the administrator or the person who owns the product in the customer organization. And that might be somebody different than the person who's using it day after day. Ideally, you want to simplify all of this as much as possible, see how much content you can reuse, but this is where we're really looking at scale. So for example, we have a customer segment that is what we call our commercial customers, or our tier 4 customers. They are under a certain ACV threshold. They are fully automated. So we have an email sequence that runs for them. It comes from our scaled CX team, and all of those are marketing generated. I worked with our professional services team, our customer success, and our customer support teams to put together all of the content, but all of that content is marketing generated. I do have to go back and redo it all, but it exists now in that format, right? So that's a huge opportunity for scale. We can really, really reduce the load for CSMs in that tier who have huge books of business by running that. Office hours are really helpful for this segment as well. So thinking about it that way. And then there might be tiers where you're not looking to scale, right? If you have like a high tier, these are companies spending, I don't know, depending on your company size, over 500K, over $1 million, over 10 million, right? It might be different depending on your organization, but that might be something where marketing is going to have a really light touch because they are getting super, super white glove treatment by your CS team. Thanks for joining, Melissa. And so for all of this, putting all of this together, I really am always looking to get back to basics. Like, what are the few things, 3, 4, 2, whatever things that a new customer needs to do to see value? As much as you can boil this down to just the simple pieces, you are in the best shape. Thoughts, questions, challenges you're having? Cool. Also, I should say, I'll share my LinkedIn profile. You can always message me, and then I'm on the CMA weekly Slack fairly regularly. So if you want to talk more about this, I always have more to say. All right, this is our last one. This is about my favorite thing, everyone's favorite thing, KPIs and goals. In my company, we call them GKSOs, and I can never remember what it stands for. Goals, key objectives, and S. Oh, dang. All right. Well, I'll look up what the acronym stands for, but GKSOs, KPIs, OKRs, whatever you call them. Thinking about how all of the different activities that your different teams are doing, how they all level up to the same overarching goal, I think is a great way to keep in alignment. It's easy to establish alignment, like, yeah, we're all on the same page. Great. Once you're in the weeds, once your programs are all running, it can get a little messier. So I really advocate for, if you have a chief customer officer or a head of CS, anybody who is sort of your counterpart on the customer success revenue side of the house owning this, y'all should be extremely aligned on what your top level goals are. So whether that's around speed to onboarding, whether that's around whether that's around how quickly, their customer time to value and how you're reporting on that, whatever the particular KPI, OKR, whatever you call it, is, UNCS should be absolutely laser focused on the same thing. The other part of this, as I mentioned, is this is always going to be a work in progress. I always want to get to the end of developing out life cycle programs and hit send, hit launch, and then you're done. That just is not the case, right? You're always going to be iterating. You're always going to be evolving to meet the changing needs of your customer base. And this is why I think keeping that one-to-one, that those relationships between yourself and the other functions who are involved in onboarding, this is something that you have to keep doing over and over and over and over again. Because especially if you find out, all right, say this is a real example. If you find out that customer support is experiencing something specific, they're starting to get a way higher intake of challenges at a really specific point. They're getting a ton of support tickets. They're really having challenges. That is going to end up affecting all of you. And so really staying on board or staying on top of all of that, and making sure that you are aligned with the people you need to be aligned with, is something that will keep you all on the same page. All right. That is what I have in terms of slides. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Is this
Taylor? I think this is super helpful. And I agree with everything you said. Do you have any experience with pushback or resistance from customer success, like trying to align with their goals and be a valuable, like business critical counterpart? I feel like I'm always putting my foot in the door of like, let me know, like, how can I help you? What are we doing?
Yeah. Yes. I think one of the constants of customer marketing, and gosh, I keep hoping that this will change, but I feel like we are a function that continuously has to prove our value and prove our worth and validate why we're in the room. I think some of this is you volunteering to do things, and then some of this, when I've experienced this before, and I've really had challenges with this. Luckily, the current iteration of my organization, it feels like we're in a really good place. We have a new chief customer officer, and he's very aligned. Previously, I really struggled with this. I think the only thing that I could do was continue to put myself in the rooms, continue to reach out to the people, and keep doing the work. Like if people won't align with you, you just align with them. Go to the individual. I worked hard to develop strong relationships with like individual CSMs, get what they were doing, because we had a pretty uneven like global leadership at that point in time. We really were not standardized globally. So I really went to the individual CSMs and said, hey, okay, what are you doing? And put some things together, shared it with them. They started using it. And that ended up sort of justifying to the people who weren't listening to me, oh, like this actually could be helpful. So I think it's a combination, right, of like keeping up, trying to get into those rooms, trying to make yourself available, and then a little bit of just like doing it. And especially if it's well thought through and, you are aligned in terms of messaging, you are aligned in terms of what you're saying. I think that, will end up proving out that this is a helpful thing. But those are my like only tips. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. I have absolutely been there.
Yeah, but that's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
I have maybe something to share. Hi, Taylor. Thank you for doing this. I'm sorry I wasn't here for the first half of the call. I had an interview. So I was bombing that probably.
Oh, I doubt it. I doubt it.
So One of the things that I find really interesting about customer marketing is that it's so very similar to community management, online marketing, for that. And really, I look at community as you have to do customer marketing and advocacy to grow a community. So that comes from my background. And one of the things that I learned early with community was that it was a new part of the company and nobody really understood it. Some didn't want it. Some had already had a lot of failings with it because when companies are trying things for the first few times, they fail at it a lot of times. They underfund it, they under hire for it, and all of these things. And so I would often come into a position where I was told, okay, we're going to do community. We have a lot of people internally excited about it, but we also have a lot of pushback, and that would come from customer success or support or even product. And it was because they had been failed before. And I think like previous people had tried their best, obviously. So I learned from Fever Bee, which is Richard Millington. He was saying every time you come into a company and you're doing this, sit down with your stakeholders and ask them, what is community to you? What do you think community could do for our company and our customers? And what are you working on today that you think community could impact at some point? If you take that and just turn it into customer marketing and advocacy, what can customer marketing and advocacy do? And what are your thoughts around it? Now I kind of have a better map of what you are looking for and how I can play a role to contribute to your team internally instead of just coming in and saying, I'm going to take all of these things and you're going to do it because leadership says so. Because at the end of the day, any minute that I take of their time is pulling away from their goals. So they are taking a risk in investing into my position and my goals. So I need to think about that and really think about, okay, what is like what can I do to align with them right now to give them value from what I'm doing so that it's going to help them be successful so that they can say, hey, we're on the same team. I want to help you as well. And so one other question I'll ask if I feel like the conversation is going well is, how do you see being able to contribute to this in the future if things go well? Because now I'm starting to build out a more positive outlook instead of the one that they have of this idea of you're just going to piss off my customers, you're going to screw up my work, and I'm going to have to like invest in what you're doing and then fix everything because it's going to be a mess again. And so that's how I get it started. And then I kind of build out a roadmap internally to say, I'm going to work with this department first, like customer success. So I'm going to talk to customer success and see what I can do to bring them value. And as that's building up, I build out my own advocacy internally. So I take this idea of I have to build an internal community to best take care of my external community of customers. Even if it's not a community, it's just a group of customers, my advocates, I still need that internal support. And I'm going to bring back value from the customers to the teams that need it as well. So looking at that roadmap, I'm going to decide, okay, I'm going to help customer success uncover more use cases and then share them with them so that they can say, oh, these are all these successful customers that want to help you. Now I can tap into them. They can tap into those customers and get even more support for the customers that are brand new and need help. At the same time, now I can move on to, okay, I need education because education is going to help me really find advocates right now. I mean, just looking at the certified customers or customers who have taken courses, in my experience, 60% of them have become advocates if they're nurtured well. So that's a great place to be. So if I plan that out and then kind of let teams know this is what I'm working on, I'm giving them a very like open plan of this is, I'm showing them that I'm taking the initiative to make them and their customers successful instead of just coming in and demanding that they help me. And that has helped. It's like you said, Taylor, building those relationships. You are taking that initiative, you're building that trust, you're showing that you are part of the team. And as you win more and more people on that team through the customer, the customer success managers, or even on the sales team, you get more and more people to buy in and want to participate and be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's my spiel.
No, I totally agree. I think while alignment is, I think, on my corporate jargon bingo board that I made, I unfortunately it's a word that I use a lot because it is a real it's such an important pillar of working in customer marketing and advocacy. There's very little that we own 100% of. Basically, everything that we do relies on other people, same as community, right? Everything that we do is going to have multiple people involved. So I think understanding what their needs are and what their challenges are. I mean, I think that's something that I've also used as like an in, especially with customer success. It's like, what are your team members really struggling to do right now? And that's where really advocating for the like one to many or one to a few approach often resonates in my experience. But no, all that you said, Mary, totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and
that
I would
struggle
also
part
add,
is important.
sorry, go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say that struggle part is important. It's a good way to get into the sales team too, is, where are you struggling to close deals? And understanding that is super helpful. Thank you for reminding me on that, Taylor.
The other thing I wanted to kind of add to that is I finished my MBA last year, and one of the classes I took was on creative problem solving. And there's a lot of really cool frameworks that you can use when you're, thanks, Mary. It was a journey, that's for sure. But there's a lot of frameworks that you can use to have a conversation about identifying problems, because I find that oftentimes we really want to jump to a solution prior to fully understanding what the actual problem is. And so when I'm kind of engaging with either stakeholders who are skeptical or are brand new, I spend a lot of time understanding and asking questions about their problems, because often the problems that they're going to initially give you are not truly the problem. There's a problem that's like 3 levels deeper. Like one very basic framework is the 5 whys, which you can Google if you haven't heard before, but you ask, like, it's a root cause analysis. We do it actually in IT a lot too, but it works for this type of thing too, where you can ask somebody, why does that matter? What would that allow you to do? Why is that important? Several times kind of in a row before you really get to the root of what the actual issue is. And then that makes coming up with a solution much more simple and clear. The other thing that I'll often do is, ask them another question that's how might we do XYZ, and get some really good input from them about some creative solutions, as well as like what's stopping us today from doing this. Like what is currently the biggest issue? What is stopping you today from having this? And one example that I'll give is we had a PMM group who really wanted to build an influencer group within our community. We already have an advocacy program. We already have an MVP program. They wanted something that felt separate. And I asked them, why is that important? Like, why is an influencer group important? What do you feel like an influencer group is going to bring, either to challenges you're trying to solve or challenges we're facing as a business? Because again, what people will often do is be like, I think this is the answer. But in reality, if the objective is something different, that may not be the right solution. And so having kind of that, just I'm here to listen lens, and taking a lot of notes and spending a lot of time interviewing people, I find really helps people get that, like, you're not there to push your agenda, you're really there to try to help them meet whatever that goal is.
I love that. That that's so helpful because, like you said, with IT, I think in product as well too, when a lot of times as we're helping customers, we're going to come across these suggestions. Oh, you should have this in the product, you should have that in the product. And it's hard to make that decision. Okay, are people going to actually use this? If they are going to use it, is it worth my investment to do this? Or is it worth, my investment to avoid this problem that they're having? And sometimes it's just not. So really drilling down into that is very helpful. Do you have like a certain series of questions that you go through if you were to like write that down?
Yeah, I do. There's actually a really good book that I'm going to see if I can find and suggest, because I'm not really a business book type of person, if I'm being honest. I find that not all of them are great, but this one was really good. It was about creative problem solving. So I'm going to see if I can find it, and I can like pop it in the Slack channel. But it went through basically a series of steps. It's like a wheel of this problem solving, and just basically laid it out in depth of what should you be doing, who should you be engaging with, and specifically like what are the specific questions that you
Yeah.
should be asking somebody, and kind of in what order, in order to get to that place. So it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna see if I can find it. It's
Thank
not
you.
immediately coming up in my Amazon orders, but I know it's in here somewhere. Oh, it's Design Centered Entrepreneurship is the name of it. Um, and the um, the concept that you're probably going to want to Google, and I'm going to warn you, like, this is like kind of a textbook type, and so it's going to be a little bit more expensive um, than your typical ebook. But what you'd like, if you want to Google and get some free info, what you want to Google is like design centered problem solving, or those types of things. And even design centered entrepreneurship. Even if you Google these authors, you can get some really good details about how that works. And they do it a lot specifically related to like product development. But I find that the same challenges that they encounter in product development are the same challenges we face in literally any kind of strategic role in a company. It's the
Yeah.
same. The concepts are identical. It's about prioritizing which initiatives you take on, and where you want to go next. And so I found it to be really helpful, and I'm certain that there's plenty of completely free resources, but I found the book to be incredibly valuable too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I always like to think about, you know, other ways or other things people are doing in other departments or other, verticals and things like that, and how it might apply to what I'm working on.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yes, I also have to jump, but thanks so much, Emily. I might reach out to you about MBA stuff. I'm looking to maybe do an
Yeah.
MBA program at some point, but would love to do that. And Mary, thank you as always.